This story is truly horrific and shocking, but such cases must be brought to light. False accusations led to violence that has no justification. Farkhunda Malikzada was born in 1987 in Kabul, the capital and largest city of Afghanistan. She grew up with her brother in a full Muslim family. In 2015, at the age of 27, Farkhunda was actively involved in volunteer work. She also attended courses where she studied law, and later she was preparing to become a teacher. In the future, she dreamed of becoming a judge. She was a very brave young woman and was not afraid to voice her opinion. She lived with her parents, helping them weave carpets, and was known for her culinary skills. Farkhunda really wanted to get married, but for some reason, she had no luck in that area. She was a devout, modest, and serious young woman, with a delicate oval face and graceful hands. She wore a chador, a light women's veil made of muslin, cotton, or silk, which covered her entire body. Friends and teachers described her as a kind, well-mannered, educated young woman who strictly adhered to local traditions and customs. Afghanistan uses the Persian calendar, and the new year there falls on the day of the spring equinox, March 21st or 22nd. A few days before the holiday, on Thursday, March 19th, 2015, Farkhunda, as usual, set out for her studies. Before leaving, she kissed her nephew, said goodbye to her mother, and promised to return in a couple of hours to help prepare the house for the celebration. She was in a great mood. On her way to her Quran study class, Farkhunda passed by the Shah du Shamshira Mosque, which, in Persian, means the Mosque of the King of Two Swords. This two-story building with yellow walls is located in the center of the city, on Andarab Street, not far from the Kabul River. Farkhunda decided to enter the mosque to pray and talk to the elderly caretaker of the shrine, named Zainuddin. He was standing behind a stall on the street, selling various goods such as colorful scarves, amulets, and scrolls with written prayers. Farkhunda unfolded one of the amulets and saw a paper scroll inside with an excerpt from the Quran. Mullah Zainuddin claimed that his goods had magical powers and could perform miracles, even allegedly helping women conceive. In addition to the amulets, Viagra and condoms were also being sold at the stall. Farkhunda was outraged. She began to assert that the items for sale had nothing to do with Islam. A loud argument ensued. Farkhunda demanded that the old man remove his stall. The noise attracted a crowd of passers-by. Fearing for himself and trying to save his reputation, Zainuddin accused Farkhunda and shouted to the crowd, "This woman burned the Quran." Farkhunda desperately denied the accusations. "I'm a Muslim. Muslims do not burn the Quran," she screamed. However, rumors about the burning of the holy book spread instantly. Crowds of angry people began to gather at the Shah du Shamshira Mosque, believing the misinformation. Poor Farkhunda stood in the mosque courtyard surrounded by men, repeatedly denying her guilt, trying to reach out to the men, claiming that she had nothing to do with the burning of the holy book. She was filmed on camera, as if she were being interrogated. Farkhunda was ordered to shut up and remain silent. Soon the argument escalated into violence. Everything happened very quickly. The crowd started pushing the woman. She fell to the ground, and they began to kick her. The police appeared, trying to calm the enraged men. The police shot into the air, and the people scattered in different directions. At that time, Farkhunda was sitting on the asphalt, covering her face with her hands. The men tore off her chador. Her hair was disheveled. The police offered to take Farkhunda to the nearest police station where she could be safe, but she refused, insisting that she be accompanied by a female police officer. Farkhunda did not want any further contact with men. Two worshippers helped Farkhunda get up. Witnesses filmed everything on their phones. The crowd of madmen unanimously decided that for allegedly burning a copy of the Quran, Farkhunda must be killed and sent to hell right then and there. By now, around 1,000 people had gathered on the street, all watching to see what would happen next. It is believed that about 150 men participated in the lynching of Farkhunda. 150 men were against one woman. The crowd stormed into the mosque. The police tried to push the attackers away, tried to stop them, but nothing worked. The police made some efforts to restrain the people, but the crowd was stronger. They gave up and just watched what was happening. The men dragged Farkhunda to the roof of the mosque, and without hesitation threw her down. I will skip the horrific details. It is known that Farkhunda, as much as she could, tried to defend herself, but she had no chance of surviving. The woman died near the mosque. Afterward, her body was tied with a long rope to a car and dragged along the street for about 200 meters. Then it was thrown into the dried-up bed of the Kabul River, covered with stones and set on fire, though the fire struggled to catch. People tore off their clothes and threw them into the fire to help the flames consume Farkhunda. The entire lynching process lasted about 2 hours. The crowd shouted in joy. The men also shouted anti-American slogans, accusing Farkhunda of collaborating with the Americans and working at the French embassy. Meanwhile, Farkhunda's parents were at home, unaware of what had happened, waiting for their beloved daughter to return. Around 4 p.m., Farkhunda's father received a call from her number, informing him that the family needed to urgently come to the Shah Dushamshira Mosque. Farkhunda's father, mother, and brother arrived at the shrine. They saw a large crowd, but did not yet know what had happened or why so many people were gathered. The family was sent to the police station for questioning. The investigators informed them that Farkhunda had gotten into a difficult situation. They said that the woman was alive and in the station. The police demanded that the family tell everyone that Farkhunda had mental health issues, or they might face serious consequences. Her mother and father refused to do so. Later, the police informed the parents that their daughter was dead, and they needed to collect the body, more accurately, what was left of it. Farkhunda's mother recounted, "We went to the morgue. I opened the plastic bag with the zipper and saw my daughter. I spoke to her, wiped her hands and face. Her body had many burns. I asked, 'Why did they do this to you, my daughter?' I felt as if she answered me, 'I was innocent. I was innocent, Mom.'" After this, the authorities ordered Farkhunda's family to leave Kabul immediately for their own safety. Farkhunda's father, mother, and brother left the capital. News of the tragedy spread across all social media. Witnesses actively posted videos, and some of the men even boasted about their involvement in this horrific act. The very next day, several influential officials and religious figures publicly supported the actions of the mob, believing that no one should disrespect the Quran. However, the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, immediately condemned this barbaric act carried out by his people in broad daylight near a holy site. The president ordered an investigation. After several hours of thorough checks, Kabul's security service reported that they found no evidence linking the 27-year-old woman to the burning of the Quran or to any collaboration with foreign agents. The officials and religious figures who had supported the lynching withdrew their statements. All of them were subsequently dismissed from their positions. The Malikzada family returned to Kabul to bury Farkhunda. The farewell ceremony took place on March 22, 2015, 3 days after the tragedy. Thousands of people came to Farkhunda's funeral. Anger and rage gave way to shame and sorrow. According to Afghan traditions, the coffin with the deceased is always carried by men, but in Farkhunda's case, with her father's permission, only women carried the coffin. When any men offered their help or tried to touch the coffin, the women shouted, "Don't touch it. Where were you when 150 people attacked Farkhunda? Where were you?" No one had an answer to this question. The women believed they were not carrying a coffin, but a hero. This was one of those rare moments in Afghanistan when women supported each other and stood together. 2 days after the funeral, on March 24th, thousands of women took to the streets of Kabul with slogans reading, "We are all Farkhunda." They expressed their protest and demanded justice. Some painted their faces red to reflect the image of Farkhunda's face moments before she was killed. The crowd headed to the Supreme Court building, demanding justice and an end to violence against women. Men also attended the rally to support their women. These were some of the largest peaceful protests ever seen in Afghanistan. Regarding the case of Farkhunda's murder, the authorities detained 49 men and charged them with various crimes. What was alarming was that these men were not religious extremists, but ordinary Afghan men. They were not dressed in traditional clothing. One official commented, "They have learned to wear t-shirts and jeans. They looked modern, but their hateful attitude toward women has not changed." The president's wife, Rula Ghani, could not understand why so many people believed the rumors, why they acted so quickly and violently. She said, "I think this shows that our society has been living in an atmosphere of violence for many years." A psychologist from Kabul, who works with women, believed that it was the herd mentality that made the mob of madmen believe they would become heroes by carrying out a public execution. 6 weeks later, the trial began. Activists hoped that this case would become a turning point for Afghanistan. The entire process was broadcast live. On May 5, 2015, the court's verdicts were announced. Of the 49 men, 26 were acquitted. 11 police officers were sentenced to 1 year in prison for failing to protect Farkhunda. 8 civilians were sentenced to 5 years in prison. 4 individuals were sentenced to death. The list of those convicted included the mosque caretaker, Zainuddin, who was charged with incitement. Among the 4 main perpetrators of the tragedy was Yaqub, who was only 16 years old at the time. On the day of the execution, Yaqub was working alone in his uncle's shop, selling sunglasses. At some point, Yaqub heard a commotion outside. He ran out and saw a car with a lifeless body tied to a long rope. Yaqub immediately joined the crowd. Emotions took over, and the young man became involved in the terrifying madness. In the video, it was clearly visible that Yaqub threw a large stone at Farkhunda. Yaqub's father and mother were upset when they found out what their son had gotten involved in. They never expected their Yaqub to be capable of such an act. At the same time, the father and mother agreed that their son had shown disrespect to the deceased woman, but they did not believe he had killed her. On July 2, 2015, the appellate court, in a closed hearing, reduced the sentences of the convicted men and overturned the death sentence. 3 men were sentenced to 20 years in prison. Yaqub received 10 years. 11 police officers, who had been sentenced to 1 year of imprisonment, spent only a few months behind bars and were released on bail. 4 of them were fully acquitted and returned to their previous positions in the Ministry of Interior. The court's decision provoked a new wave of protests in Kabul. The Malikzada family, activists, and human rights defenders claimed that all the sentences were unreasonably lenient. Such lenient treatment of the criminals reflected the Afghan society's lenient attitude toward violence against women. Female activists stated, "The government of Afghanistan has once again shown the world that this country is hell for women. We know that our government will once again do nothing for women. Farkhunda is not the first, and she will not be the last." 1 year after the tragedy, on March 23, 2016, a memorial was opened in Kabul in memory of Farkhunda Malikzada. The memorial is located at the very place near the Kabul River, where the young woman's body was burned. In Afghanistan, she was recognized as a martyr, a distinction reserved for fallen soldiers. In addition to the memorial, the street where the tragedy occurred was renamed in honor of Farkhunda. The mosque of Shah du Shamshira now has new caretakers. They have prohibited worshippers from walking around the premises without purpose and using mobile phones. Khoja Naeem, the new caretaker, shared that initially, many worshippers expressed dissatisfaction with these rules. Khoja Naeem said, "We tell everyone that they should pray and leave, as there is no point in wandering around the sanctuary. And as for the mobile phone ban, it is also fully justified. Why? Today, if someone falls, instead of extending a hand to help them up, we immediately reach for our phones. This should not be the case." After the incident with Farkhunda, many women in Afghanistan complained on social media that men felt emboldened and began to harass them even more openly and persistently, blaming the women for provoking the crowd's anger. Women began receiving insults from male colleagues in offices and universities. The situation with women's rights in Afghanistan remains extremely complex and concerning. Since the Taliban returned to power in 2021, Afghan women have faced systemic restrictions affecting every aspect of their lives. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are many more shocking cases ahead. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it together.